Hello and welcome back to a video which I've been going to be doing some more of. And today I'm talking about a question that has plagued my mind for about a week now with the various stories of what's happening with reform, and I'll get into this. But will the Labour Party win in 2029? Is that the play going forward? And with what I've seen with reform, I think that is on the cards. And whether that's Keir Starmer, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. But that seems to be where, in my mind, in the current trajectory of things, we're 3 years out, we'll be going to. Now, why is this the case? And I will preface this isn't my desired outcome. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm no friend of this government, and but at the same time, I have to admit that reforms actions with allowing in people from the Conservative Party who are Zionist, slopulist, and quite frankly, in their own remit, historic losers, people who were more interested in actual drama, infighting, portraying their voter base, and then obviously removing Boris, which was um, who for many Tory supporters, was their golden goose, effectively. So you got the defection of Naween Zahawi, who was this Iraqi guy, and this is the thing; they're all foreigners as well. Well, this is what crazy, or the ones that aren't even foreigners um, promote foreign interests, but that's a separate matter, like with generic and what have you. The reason why the Tory party imploded, largely from majority position from the people, uh, ordinary members of the public, is because of Boris Wave and the rapid increase of demographic change through what's called the Boris Wave immigration of, what was it, 5 million, something like that, into Britain from Africa and all other places around the globe. So looking at it, um, looking at it like this, it has caused questions originally from various pundits of this is going to be a Tory party 2.0, which is what we've all said in our circles anyway for a long time. I've said it on Iron Duke's channel for a long time as well, that this is their trajectory. But what they've got is they've got like the worst of the worst Tory types, in most of them who, quite frankly, played up. And I've seen some pushback against this. Is, well, you say that Farage can't stand others hogging the limelight. This is what happened with Rupert Lowe, in my mind, and I predicted this before all that whole ridiculous sort of thing with him and Zia Yusuf and what have you. But what I think is that this isn't a threat to Farage, because quite frankly, the people who he's invited in are total clowns. They have no experience. They largely contributed to the rapid, and I mean probably the most in the history of UK governments, the most rapid decline and destruction of this country, and its people, through mass immigration and their radical cult-like obsession with Thatcherism, free market economics, which in many ways just goes hand in hand with the worst aspects of liberalism. So that's who Farage is saddled up with, and I think it won't be a threat to him because they're not popular, and we've seen this in the polls recently of various Moripol and YouGov, where Reform are slowly losing a couple of points, and you've got Greens, Labour, and even the Tories are like gaining one or two or three. um, since all of this has happened. And this is indicative because these people aren't popular, and a lot of people, even the sort of the masses, they vote for these populist parties because in their mind it's not really populist in the way that we describe it. They just think it's different. It's a radical change. But reform, and if you think of the word reform here, it just means trying to fix a system. But the thing there is, as we all know, the system can't be fixed and it shouldn't be fixed. More importantly, it shouldn't be fixed because it is intrinsically designed against us, against the British people. It is, um, quite frankly, it sort of operates as this techno and now like even more globalized system where it's not even just Europe. I mean, it's now been focusing in the other parts of like the Far East and Asia and everything. It's the old adage of like this: Britain doesn't exist, we're just an economic zone. And that's sort of the crux of the mentality, and that's the ethos in the main parties and in reform as well. Um, to talk about Britain as a nation state, as a nation, is quite frankly, um, you know, largely condemned, even by those in reform. When we had that chap who I forget his name now, but he interviewed the likes of Tyson. He talked about the demographic changes in Britain. Well, he was large. Tyson was, well, why do I care? I'm not going to be alive, in 50 years or what have you. And that's the mentality that you come with this, that comes with this. And so, rev- Labour, and we've seen this with the by-election. So we've got a by-election up with in Greater Manchester, Gorton and Denton, and the reform candidate there is Matt Goodwin. Now, Matt Goodwin has spent his entire career writing about and trying to, deconstruct, but also bring down the far right back in the day. I remember, and I saw a clip around this today used to have that BBC like debate show where you have these uh, two seating arrangements at one wings of the studio, and you had like a Matt Goodwin versus Tommy Robinson. Now, of course, now they're all on the same side. Tommy has endorsed them. But the thing with Matt Goodwin and all these people, and this is not saying much, is that they are the perfect archetype for media's representation of what they describe as far right. They are they behave in largely clownish ways. They massively signals counter jihad, just attacking Muslims for the sake of it. Not in the and we'll get back to the Tommy sort of stuff because that's an interesting connection they have there. But it's just sort of attack on Muslims and sort of going down this sort of sectarian esque politics, which may garner some results in that area. I don't know. But one of the things is that it is okay to do that, but where the counter jihad thing gets where it just appears ridiculous with Tommy and friends is that they're okay with everybody else. They don't see any contradiction to their own criticisms of like Islam, political Islam, with Hindus, Sikhs, or African Christians, or what have you. That is for them that we can sort of exist in a this sort of multicultural society, even though you know crime and or the crime and everything is disproportionately committed by black people in this country. So looking, I mean, this with the by-election, I think Reform will lose because they'll live up to this cartoonish uh, villainy that is set out for them because they lean into it. Because Boris and the Boris Tory adjacents who have joined Reform would lean into it as well. I mean, um, they've even got that former whip, who had that spider or something. I mean, these people are just nutters. Quite frankly, they're just nutters and embarrassing. And the thing though is, if they were and actually effective at doing things, if you take Blair and his cohort, you can say they're, you know, awful, destroyed this country and its foundation and all that sort of stuff, which the right will sort of harp on about. But you can't deny that he was effective at doing it. He could do it. He knew which levers of power to pull, and he had the access to do so. Even though, he even had like certain problems in his time in government. Digital ID has like been the bane of his entire time in politics, and he's had a bit of a um, publicly with the digital ID stuff, even though it's non-compulsory, it's still going to be implemented. So he's won in that regard, and it will be made compulsory down the future. There'll be something will happen where where it'll be required, or they'll encourage younger generations coming through. So it's just going to happen regardless. There's nothing you can really do about that now. That gate has been open, so it's the Pandora's box has been opened in that regard. So yeah, I think with the by-election coming up with Reform, I think Labour will win. Um, I think with these people, and this may be like a Tory party revival thing because this has all been orchestrated a lot with um, you know Rees-Mogg and those people who are die-in-the-wall Tory loyalists, encouraging this sort of interchangeable political dialogue with Reform and the Tory party. This could be the Tory party's um, way of discrediting, well, getting these, encouraging these dipshits to go into Reform, and then Reform tanks it, and then there'll be a Tory upswing. But the thing though is, um, the public have had this sort of Tory party fatigue, and they've had this Thatcherite fatigue. There is this grand fatigue of all these things, and um, I think a lot of the Green Party polling is astroturfed. I think it's largely astroturfed. I think Corbyn stuff was organic, and there was some real momentum behind that. But also, I have to admit, a lot of the reform stuff that it is astroturf. I mean, there is always that baseline support that Farage always got in the country in elections. You get like cap about, I think under UKIP it was a couple million. Under the Brexit Party it was about 4 million. But him, even with reform, it's you know it's touch and go. In reality, it's going to be turnout low because um, if you're recycling through these Tory politicians, you're going to have the same thing as 2024 where there's low turnout. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's what the regime decides. And I think the regime wants to have Labour again, and um, I do wonder, after all is said and done with Trump and the Republicans, because it's more likely than not that the GOP are going to lose the midterms, and I will question of who will be the next president, whether it be a Republican or Democrat. But it's not beyond the realms of possibility that at this moment in time, MAGA is being widely condemned by the right across Europe. particularly in countries where they've had, the recent thing was Greenland, but in other things as well. Morgoth talked about it in his recent article. Oh, sorry, recent like video essay. The uh, was it America versus Lotuses or something, which is really good, really good. And unfortunately, when you look at the uh, sort of populist movement that stem from America and reaches out, Farage is up there. He's a very, very close ally of reform, of Trump. And if there is this sort of mass discredit thing going on, you know, and I do talk about how the Liberal Party under Trudeau, when Mark Carney came in, managed to use the energy of nationalism against Trump because of Trump wanting 51st states. If that same energy that could keep Starmer and the Labour Party in power and could effectively destroy his own sort of bonds and loyalty with Trump, could actually destroy Farage. And I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility. I think that is most likely outcome, because that's like the outcome that's been set, and and maybe even with the AFD. We saw that with Gert Wilders as well. But he was a massive Zionist in the Netherlands, and um, you know, I don't know the ins and out with details with him, but you see with these populist movements, they end up just there are scenarios where they will lose and they will tank. And if Europe become is a if the European left lean into more nationalistic, anti-Americanisms, it might just fly. It probably will just fly. Given Trump is becoming more and more this new Monroe doctrine of, and I think I think a lot of people are not using the term correctly here, but it was a way of keeping European powers out of North America to begin with, right? Back in the day. And looking ahead, that's not really a problem. But in the sort of casus belli of the American state, this is about, I would say more of a hemisphere doctrine. It's trying. They want Greenland, um, possibly even Canada, and also, I mean, we've all seen the maps. The idea scenario is Canada, Greenland, Mexico, and the Caribbean nations like Cuba and what have you. And that has like this hemisphere-wide dominance from the United States. I think that is their sort of ideal scenario. And we saw this what they did with Venezuela as well. But the thing though is with Trump is he ratchets it up, and the MAGA people, they ratchet up the rhetoric, but don't really follow through. I mean, ultimately with Greenland, it was like they sort of turned it into a trade dispute and then came to an agreement. There was no invasion, but you had the cheerleaders who went a bit mental on that, so that on that one, um, and then with Venezuela, they were able, because it was like effectively a third world state, they were able to kidnap the president overnight. Presumably I mean, given the military operation of that, looking back at it, it was probably some aspect or very big aspect of the Venezuelan regime allowed that to happen. They already had like someone in place to take over and condemn Trump at UN and all that. Go through the whole rigmarole of it all. So yeah. Sorry, going back on topic. So yeah, uh, I think Labour will probably win the next general election. You can listening back, viewer, if we're in 2029 election night and I am wrong, you can come back to the comments and correct me on that, I guess. Until then, I will see you next time.